Hi, Poppy Yeager here at This Day in History. April 22nd, 1889, the Oklahoma Land Rush began. Oklahoma, ever since 1817, was considered Indian territory. Why? Because the land in Oklahoma was deemed unfit for white settlement, but good enough for Native Americans. And beginning in 1817, when white Americans wanted Native American land, they started to push the Native Americans off their ancestral land west to Oklahoma. This should sound familiar. The Trail of Tears. Andrew Jackson, he pushed the Native Americans, the Cherokee, out of their homeland and forced them to relocate to Oklahoma. Along the way, thousands died. The Cherokee weren't the only ones, though, that were forced into Indian territory. There were also the Chickasaw, the Choctaw, and the Cheyenne, and Apache. Many Native American tribes lived in Oklahoma. But then sometime by the 1880s, white settlers realized that they could live in that land. Advancements had been made in agriculture and ranching. New techniques were devised that meant that white people could eke out a living in Oklahoma. So they appealed to the government to open the land to them, to take it away from the Native Americans. President Benjamin Harrison agreed to this and said, okay, we'll do that. And he had several policies that began to open the land. The first was the 1.9 million acres that were going to be given to settlers. In Oklahoma, Indian Territory, certain parts of the territory had been designated to specific tribes. However, this 1.9 million square miles had not been designated to a particular tribe. This was the first that was opened. And before the date that it was going to be open, because it was announced in March that on April 22nd, it would open to settlement, would-be settlers began lining up on all sides of the Oklahoma territory. They were ready, thousands of them. And then at high noon on April 22nd, 1889, a cannon shot was fired, and people began their mad dash to stake out claims. They staked out farms, they staked out plots in towns. Cities such as Oklahoma City were almost went up overnight. This was just the beginning of white settlement taking over what had been promised to the Native Americans in Oklahoma. The Dawes Act had decided the Dawes Act was going to divide land amongst Native Americans in territory that had been designated to them. However, once the land was divided amongst the Native Americans, anything that was left was then given to white people so they could settle it. Oklahoma was supposed to be Indian territory, and it was until white people thought they could do something better with that land. This is the history of America. This is what we did to Native Americans over and over again. Promised them something, and then once it became better for white people, they're like, oh, nope, sorry. That promise meant nothing. I'm going to take the land because I want it. We have done that time and time again. Anyway, that's This Day in History. April 22nd, 1889, the land rush for Oklahoma began, breaking yet another promise to the Native Americans.